You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Local, the state, the national, man, we got all of it. And we're covering down, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Welcome to Taco Tuesday. That's right, Taco Tuesday. And oh, by the way, there is indeed a sound effect for that.
Just 1 second, hold on.
What do you mean, just 1 second? Hold on. Did you just say just 1 second on the sound effect?
Well, you sounded really loud. So
I was blasting. I don't know what's going on over here.
I was distracted trying to fix that, but I think we're good now.
Either I'm very bellicose today or my microphone is super hot.
Yeah.
The gain is like, somebody bump the gain over here? What is happening right now? Hey, how you guys doing? By the way, that is JP telling me to hang on a second over there on the... How you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm good. All right, it's not Auburn, Alabama, but you saw what happened to my alma mater, University of South Alabama?
That was pretty jacked up.
It is pretty jacked up. They get invited to postseason play, and then all of a sudden, I'm sorry, we didn't mean you, it was somebody else.
Yeah.
What the heck?
It's just that's where the NCAA is now. But yeah, we got teams like UNC making the tournament, so
yeah,
South Alabama's not good enough for the NIT.
We got teams like West Virginia filing suit about it.
Yeah.
Too. All right, hey, plenty of that. We got a great show laid on for you. Coming up at the beginning of the second hour, we'll be on with Congressman Dale Strong. You're going to want to hear him because we're going to talk to him about everything and everything that we can think of, to include the demand that he show up at an angry town hall today. That was just ridiculous. We'll talk to him about that and other things, to include, yes, I'm going to ask the question about Space Force, but that's coming up at the beginning of the second hour, Congressman Dale Strong. And then there's a triple dipper just filled up with stuff, so hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. You know what I'm calling the first one? The Autopen Presidency. Oh, yeah. The Autopen Presidency. That's what we apparently had. We have seen more use and perhaps abuse of the Autopen signature machine in the Biden administration than maybe ever in the history of ever. So we're going to talk about it. What does it mean? Is it challengeable? What should we know about it? Are there some circumstances that we should be able to glean from surrounding sources? We'll talk about all of that. Autopen Presidency, number 1 on the Triple Dipper. Number 2, we're covered down on birthright citizenship. So I was on Newsmax over the weekend, and that was one of the things that we talked about on the panel that I was on. And yes, birthright citizenship, it's a big, big, hairy deal. In my opinion, the 14th Amendment did not contemplate what we saw during the last 4 years, with millions and millions flooding across the border and just creating millions of new citizens. Is that the way it's supposed to be? Is that why we have a 14th Amendment? Arguably not. We'll talk about the whys and the wherefores. Number 2 on the Triple Dipper, birthright citizenship. And then number 3, transmania, because yes, it's still ongoing. But yes, there's also a lot to be said about what's happening and pushing back on the trans agenda. And we'll talk about it from a military perspective. We'll talk about it in schools. We'll talk about it in sports. But I got some of the latest headlines and all of that. Transmania coming up, number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, let me jump on into the Rightside Way opening monologue, and I'll remind you guys that Stan McDonald, attorney Stan McDonald, partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee up in Huntsville, he is the sponsor daily of the Rightside Way monologue, and I'll tell you more about him in just a few minutes. All right, so I don't know if you've ever seen someone trying to avoid eye contact. I mean, it can be humorous. It can also be a sign of great weakness. It can also be driven by a deep desire not to be held accountable. Don't make eye contact. Maybe it'll go away and they won't notice. My dog used to do that. I miss my dog. We lost him a few years ago, but he was our 3rd child. A big old black Doberman Pinscher. Average weight for the breed is like 60 to 70 pounds, but my dog named Ranger, he weighed in at 120 pounds. And he could look fearsome too, y'all. But Charlene, I mean, I like to say Charlene turned him into a 120-pound lapdog. He was smart. I mean, you could speak to him in a conversational tone and he would smile at you too. It was crazy. Big old black Doberman with scary teeth standing almost waist high at the shoulder. Charlene could just look at him and say, "Who's pretty?" And he would just wag that stubby tail and get all beside himself. He was a good dog. But he could be mischievous too. He was a prankster. I mean, he loved to knock a book or a newspaper out of the way if you were reading. He did like this, come up and just like with his nose and just knock it right out of your hands. He'd go get a sock or something he knew he wasn't supposed to get and just come and stare at you, holding it in his teeth and see what you do. But sometimes he did step across the line, and he was smart. He was so smart, and he knew when he'd gone too far because he'd stopped making eye contact. "Ranger, what did you do?" Dog looks away like you're talking to someone else. "Ranger, look at me." Then you have to grab his face and turn him to look right at you, and his eyes would roll off to the side. "Nothing to see here. Don't make eye contact. It'll be all right." But I miss my dog. But you know what? Avoidance is never really the best strategy. That was my dog, right? But people do that too. And what's really aggravating is when it's deliberate, like with an intent to deceive, and they even hide it, because you're not allowed to know what they know, even when they are the ones who did something wrong. Well, let me suggest to you that we're seeing that a lot in government. In government, it's an issue that needs to be enhanced because, truthfully, sunshine is the greatest disinfectant. Now, the late, great Charlie Daniels, he was an icon. He was a country music crossover. He could play just as well on classic rock channels as he could on any country channel, and wow, that man could skin a fiddle. And when you're hearing the epic fiddle battle in his classic song, "The Devil Went Down to Georgia," you're hearing old Charlie himself pulling that rosin bow across the strings. But as much as he was a music legend, Charlie Daniels was also a patriot, and a conservative patriot at that. Despite the fact that he had openly supported Jimmy Carter back in the 70s because he was from the South, Daniels went on to become an ardent and very outspoken critic of all things liberal. He loved troops, he loved the flag, he loved the Second Amendment, he believed in the sanctity of life, and he loved this country, all of which he spoke out on regularly. And he had some amazing quotes. He's quoted one time as saying, "I couldn't care less about being politically correct." Outstanding. He was always on social media, especially Twitter. He ran his own account, from what I understand. I started following him early on, and I'll never forget one morning. I think I've told y'all the story. One morning, somewhere around dark 30, I'm sitting there with a cup of coffee, and a tweet from Charlie Daniels hit my Twitter feed saying something that I thought was good. And the tweet was only a couple of seconds old when I saw it, so on a whim, I tweeted right back and wished him a good day. And to my shock, seconds later, Charlie Daniels replied back to me and wished me a good day as well. Made my day, I'll tell you that. But here I'm getting back to my point about avoidance, about not making eye contact, about lack of transparency. Because something that Charlie used to tweet on a regular basis, just a regular occurrence, you could count on seeing it on his Twitter feed like several times a week. He would just simply type the words, "Benghazi ain't going away." And I always appreciated that. He may not have had the ability to see much done about the lack of accountability for the Benghazi disaster, but he was also not going to let it be forgotten, and rightfully so. Well, I say all that to say today the news broke that 23 and a half years later, newly minted Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is apparently ordering that all Benghazi files be declassified. Really? Nearly a quarter century later, one of the greatest cover-ups in modern U.S. history is being ordered to a place of transparency. I mean, will we find out? Will we see any smoking gun that says that Hillary and Obama let them burn? I don't know. I kind of doubt it because I suspect those files have been purged, or maybe they were on Hillary's personal server that she had destroyed. Who knows? Maybe. But maybe that one thing, that one email, that one document, that one after-action report is still sitting there in some archive or some file cabinet, and maybe we'll get to see it. But at the very least, I appreciate the fact that they're talking about opening it up because sunshine is the greatest of all disinfectants. We lost some good people in the Benghazi attack. It was an attack that resulted in the deaths of a U.S. ambassador, Christopher Stevens, Foreign Service Officer Sean Smith, two highly decorated former Navy SEALs serving as security named Tyrone Woods and Glenn Doherty. If you haven't seen the movie 13 Hours, I highly recommend it. Men who were abandoned by their government in the middle of a 13-hour-long running gun battle. It was an epic account of bravery and the sacrifice of good men. At the same time, it's also the living embodiment of fecklessness and responsibility avoidance. It is the political version of not making eye contact because it was covered up. And keep in mind, by the way, who was in charge back during the Benghazi affair. Barack Obama was president, Joe Biden was vice president, Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. When asked about security at Benghazi, which technically was her responsibility, Mrs. Clinton repeatedly asserted that it was not her responsibility. At Senate hearings, Secretary of State Clinton threw her arms in the air and yelled, "At what difference at this point does it make?" I'll tell you what difference it makes. Those were your men, your responsibility. Those were your actions and omissions that resulted in their death, and we want to know now. And maybe we will now. Keep in mind, too, that too often when you get into a pattern of secrecy, of avoidance, of making no eye contact, that secrecy begets more secrecy. 10 years after Benghazi, Joe Biden, he actually recruited the former White House counsel who had steered the Obama-Biden response to Benghazi to be his new White House counsel again. Oh, good. The same advisors. That's the same Joe Biden then who presided over the debacle in Afghanistan, because apparently some lessons are never learned. Oh, by the way, that brings up a point. It is also understood that Secretary Pete Hegseth has now ordered a complete investigation into the Afghanistan withdrawal, and in his words, there will be accountability. I hope so. Why? Because good people died and no one ever said boo about it. And once again, sunshine is the greatest disinfectant. But there's more. We're hearing that over 2,000 pages of Epstein files have been found in the office of the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. How about that? They had been withheld. They are now with the AG's office, and AG Pam Bondi is working on getting them revealed soon. They need to be. The only reason they're not already open is widely believed to be because of who they're protecting from embarrassment. People who are, being provided a cover-up. No eye contact. While we're on it, by the way, President Trump announced yesterday the John F. Kennedy assassination files as well as the Robert F. Kennedy assassination files will be released today. It's said that over 80,000 pages of documents have been withheld from the public view for over 6 decades. Why? What would be the point? 60 years later? Well, hopefully we'll find out. Again, transparency washes away doubt. Sunshine is the greatest disinfectant. Yeah, memories are too often short, especially when news cycles have moved on to other things. But there's a reason why transparency is actually needed. For one thing, Americans are generally curious and sometimes suspicious groups of folks, right? We want to know things. We believe in free speech, but we also believe in not suppressing speech, which means that we, generally speaking, believe that information ought to be shared. And I'll be the first to admit, though, that I fully understand that some things do deserve classification. I mean, things like open investigations, matters of national security, questions of personnel data. Sure, I get it. For over 20 years, I carried personally a TS-SCI clearance. I worked in special access programs where you have to be read on and then read off. So I get it. But this is not that. Because you see, the other issue that we're dealing with here is not just the fact that people want to know. It's because people deserve some accountability. Because you should never be allowed to use classifications, keeping things from prying eyes, just to cover up what someone did wrong. Classifications should only be used in matters of a sensitive nature, that their release could cause actual harm to the nation or to key individuals. Classifications and the squirreling away of knowledge should never be used as a means of avoiding accountability. So yeah, it's about time for some people to make some eye contact. Because, sunshine is the greatest disinfectant. And that's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Yeah, I did. I mean, I carried a TS-SCI for years. I worked SAPs in the Pentagon, and I understand the idea that there are some things that would deserve classification, and you just do that. It's a matter of course. But I think the classification process gets abused too often. I also believe the classification is often used to help with covering things up so that someone doesn't get any level of accountability. Don't make eye contact. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Man, saving the world one soundbite at a time. Hey, got to tell you real quick before I go to the phones, attorney Stan McDonald. Y'all, Stan McDonald, he's a partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee. He's been practicing law for 30 years in North Alabama. And listen, I know him personally. Not only is Stan McDonald the kind of guy who can advocate for your legal needs quite well, but y'all, I'm telling you, he's been in the mix, in the fray, if you will, in the trenches on all the things, the politics, the policies that right-side ruffians care about. He is definitely one of us. So attorney Stan McDonald, yes, he has represented his clients in literally thousands of real estate transactions over the years. He knows how to represent you in every local, state, and federal court. I like to say if Stan McDonald's on your side, you're going to have no greater friend, and likewise, your adversaries would have no greater foe. So here, I'm going to tell you how to get in touch with him. You need a lawyer, Stan McDonald. The law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man, and here's his phone number. You ready? It's 256-479-3020. That's 256-479-3020. And tell him you heard about it on Rightside. I would appreciate that. And another thing. No representation made. The quality legal service be performed with great quality legal service support with other lawyers. Yeah.
8.2.
Oh, an 8.2. Thank you.
Good.
Hey, before I run out of time, I got about two minutes. Wolverine Dan's on line one. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Well, I'm doing quite well, and I'm very happy to hear that these files on our president that was assassinated that I've always wanted to know.
Yeah.
And Martin Luther King, Robert, and Epstein, and Afghanistan. If Epstein and Afghanistan's going to be hitting home because some of these people that were involved in that are still living.
Oh, yes, indeed.
So, I love that. I am a taxpayer like you are. You're a patriot. You served. I did not. I feel bad about that. But you know what? I'm very patriotic, and I love my country, and I know I've been here quite a long time, and I've got the aches and pains to know I contributed quite a bit while I still was working, and even now I do what
Absolutely.
I can do. But
Absolutely.
getting those files to me means everything. If we can't have transparency in our government and even our own lives, we need to be honest and do the right thing, for crying out loud. And if we don't have that as a country and borders, we really don't have much of nothing. So as far as I'm concerned, my friend, I cannot wait to see this. I hope we find some things.
Yeah.
And expose the people for who they are, because when you represent this country or when you are just a human being on this earth, you're supposed to respect and do the right thing and be a good citizen.
You are spot on, brother. You are spot on, and the music's about to play, but that was perfect timing, and you are correct. That and Benghazi ain't going away either. Thank you, man. Appreciate you. Wolverine Dan. All right, listen, we're going to come back and get a few text messages. Text lines are open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text her to call it. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Man, covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Goes from Huntsville all the way back to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa all the way back to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that prettiest little town on the plains called Auburn. And oh, yes, stretching across the border then to Fort Benning, Georgia. Fort Benning, I called it Fort Benning. And then even big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. Love it. Love this audience. All right, so we got plenty to talk about. Text lines indeed are open, 833-687-4448. Coming up top of the hour, at the beginning of the next hour, we'll be having Congressman Dale Strong calling in. And I gotta touch on a few of the text messages I've already gotten, to include David from Buc-ee's. David from Buc-ee's, saw that already? He sent us a picture. He's using his brand spanking new Rightside Media cork bottom super duper coffee mug. That's very cool. By the way, those are some good-looking mugs, too. I used one the other day for the first time, and they're legit, man. They're just very cool. But, yeah, you got to check out our merch store. Thank you, David from Buc-ee's. Appreciate you. You got to check out the merch store of the rightside.media.org website. That's rightside.media.org. We got T-shirts, hats, coffee mugs, and we got the Bulletproof Influence engraved glasses that have a 308 shell or bullet embedded in the glass. Very cool. Bulletproof Influence. Anyway, check it all out, the merch store at rightside.media.org. Dave from Capshaw, what'd you send me? Dave sends me a meme of something. Federal judge orders astronauts return to the space station. Yeah, no doubt. That's just... But you know what? That kind of hits home because literally we're talking off air. In the last few minutes, I'm talking about this broke... The one I'm looking at, JP, broke in the last 12 minutes.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same. I think that this one's 15 minutes ago. This tweet, 25. Benny Johnson put it out 25 minutes ago.
Yeah, I'm looking at Benny. Maybe I haven't refreshed, but mine said 12. But U.S. District Court Judge Theodore Chuang. I'm not sure where he is, which district he's in, but he is ordering. The court finds the defendant's actions have taken to shut down USAID on an accelerated basis. Likely violated the U.S. Constitution in multiple ways, and these actions harm not only the plaintiffs but also the public interest. And it says that basically he's granting an injunction. And what I imagine he's saying is by enjoining the federal government from shutting down USAID, that USAID would then have to be restored.
He's from Maryland, by the way.
Maryland?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that figures. Yeah, that's asinine. You know, at some point, they're going to have to recognize that, you said it, I think we were talking offline, you said it, that presidents actually do have executive powers.
Yeah.
I mean, they do.
The left is trying to say that separation of powers means that the courts have all the power. It's not the case at all.
No, it's a checks and balances
It's checks
thing.
and balances. They're all like on the same footing. But it's...
Now, judges can get it wrong, and I get that. They have judicial discretion to review the law and interpret it if there's in the absence of statutory law or clear and unequivocal case precedent, they are allowed to interpret to the degree they have to. It's called judicial discretion. They have to. But they can also have what the appellate courts call an abuse of their discretion. And there are a number of these cases right now where it feels like an abuse of discretion. It also feels very singularly identified towards anything Trump does. Now, I say that, people go, oh, you're just saying that because you like what Trump does. Well, yeah, there's that. But hey, oh, by the way, I'm also an attorney. Oh, by the way, I just saw a stat up on the screen. JP and I were looking at that. It was up on the screen a little while ago, and it showed all of the last presidents. We're talking from Bush, Obama, then Trump, and then Biden, and now Trump too, and how many times they had been enjoined on a national level by a federal district court judge. Oh, you got Biden in 4 years was only enjoined, I want to say 14 times. Am I right?
Yeah, it was 14, and Trump's at 15 right now.
Trump's at 15 now
This
within
term.
60 days. Oh, by the way, in his first term, Trump had 64 times, which, oh, by the way, Obama only had like 12.
Yeah, 12.
And
Bush
then
had 6.
Bush had 6. And you look at this and go, okay, no, there's no partisanship going on in these courtrooms. Now, some would say, well, that's because Trump does so many bad things. No. Trump has equally competent advisors and legal teams and analysts to give him policy positions he can work with. Does he act? Yes. Does he also react? Yes. Is he decisive? Yes. But you know what? He's not an idiot. That guy has signed more contracts in his life than Joe Biden will ever dream of. He understands the art of staying within the law in order to make something stick. And you cannot tell me that he can have literally 6 times. I mean, actually, he's got 6 times more than Obama. In just over 4 years of time as a president, he's got 6 times the number of injunctions against his policies than Obama had in 8 years. That's maddening. All right, that being said, USAID is not getting rebuilt. I don't see it.
So what happens now is the question. Like, if a judge rules that, are they just going to hold out and it's going to go to the Supreme Court?
It's going to immediately be appealed. The judge has to put the order into a position for appellate level work, and it has to be issued. There's nuances. And the federal law is going to be different than various state laws, but they all typically align on this. An injunction, by the way, is not the end of a case. An injunction is not a ruling on the merits. What we are seeing is that too often the judges are opining heavily on what they believe the merits of the case are. An injunction is designed to do what's called preserving the status quo. In other words, if you got 2 people and one of them did something to the other, and it's an ongoing hurt, like the doing of that thing wasn't a one-time thing, it's like an ongoing hurt. It's causing damages accruing over time and potential for more massive damages. The judge can look at it. On the motion of the person who's been aggrieved, they can move for an injunction to stop the behavior for the time being and maintain the status quo until the merits of the case are fully decided. The judge has to look at it, though, and he has to review the case to the extent that he can at that point without all the evidence, without all the facts, without all the hearings. He still has to review it and decide that he believes, first of all, that the plaintiff, the one who's complaining right now, has a likelihood of prevailing on the merits of the case eventually. That's what it says, a likelihood of prevailing on the merits. And that the failure to create the injunction would cause irreparable harm, an ongoing damage. Those things being said, if the judge sees that, he can grant the injunction just to preserve the status quo. It does not mean the case is over. The injunction itself can be appealed. Now, a few of these judges have been putting their decisions into form that is not appealable, and then you have to ask for the judge to actually issue an order and make it a final order on injunction or something, depending on the jurisdiction you're in. And they literally then have to put their order in the right place, and then the Trump side, in this case, has X amount of time under the federal rules to file their appeal. The appeals process is firm. It is real. It is necessary. Now, there are a lot of calls for impeachment. We were talking about that offline. You had a question on that?
Well, no, I was just going to say, like, the Supreme Court has already ruled that the USAID payments that have been promised need to go through, which, sucks, but I understand that. But if what?
Not quite. It was not quite like that.
Was it not?
There were $2 billion worth of payments that had already been earmarked for work that had already been done. And so it's almost as if somebody did the work expecting payment.
Yeah.
And so those $2 billion were being withheld. It's 1.9 actually, but the bottom line is the Supreme Court didn't rule on it. They just declined to take it up, which means it leaves the lower order, court order in place. So it's kind of like they ruled, but they didn't.
Yeah.
It's like a non-ruling ruling. And so the 1.9 was not everything USAID. It was just this one batch for things that had already been contracted, and the people who contracted in good faith had every right to believe they get paid. So,
but one last thing on the USAID, it was created by executive order by JFK, if I remember correctly.
It was.
So then I feel like it's perfectly reasonable for it to be able to get knocked down by executive order by a president.
It was created by executive order JFK, but then it was codified by statute through congressional action, I think in the 70s. So, but then there's a question about whether it was a full-on formal branch of government creation, or did it just merely become a source of appropriation dollars to be sent? So can Trump undo, or is it purely a creature of statute now that can't be undone without congressional action? I do know this. Trump has a say-so in the policies and the application. Mm-hmm. And what you saw was you had 10,000 employees that did not get rehired. They were let go. 10,000. So this judge apparently is wanting 10,000 people put back in their desks. And this judge is apparently wanting billions and billions of dollars on radical things around the world being spent, even though it does not even equate to the policies of the current administration. So I don't think so. But there's going to have to be a SCOTUS reckoning here somewhere.
It's going to have to be a SCOTUS precedent set that the president actually has some power. Believe it or not,
actually has some power. Now, let me ask you this: you were talking about impeachment before we got on the air.
Yeah.
Did you have a question on that, or were you just making a statement to me? I don't remember now.
It's well, we were talking about the Supreme Court Justice. How's his name escaping me at the moment?
Roberts.
Roberts made a statement about how he doesn't like the impeachment of these judges, and talked about how, or the talk of impeaching these judges, that are making these rulings. I guess I feel like it would be pretty reasonable if a judge makes a ruling that is so blatantly unconstitutional to have the impeachment talk come up. But I also agree with the fact that I don't think it's good to get in the habit of just impeaching judges that make rulings that you don't like.
Exactly.
So I think there's a balance there of like, yeah, we shouldn't impeach every judge that makes a ruling we don't like. But at the same time, if you're going to make just the ordering of return of the deportation flights is the one that I think is the most egregious. I think that one would be the one where I'm, maybe not full on board of impeachment, but I think the conversation's fair if you make such an egregious ruling like that. So
here, I totally agree with you. So impeachment exists, and it exists for a reason. It's an option that is available, and it's certainly something that should be considered in some of the more egregious circumstances. In this case, if somebody found out that judge accepted a bribe to guide his decision, impeach him in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. If someone found out that judge had gone to a seminar that said, you got to hate Trump in everything you do, and he had stood up and clapped, and somebody had it on film, and it was obvious that he had a bias and he didn't recuse himself, then impeach him, okay, because he's lost his judicial discretion. The court's going to look for, did he have discretion to make the decision he did, and did he have reasonable grounds to make that decision? And was it based in law? And was he plainly and palpably wrong? That's the phrase they use. And the other is, did he abuse his discretion by carving out the law in such a way that it never could have been thought of that way? And he can get reversed on those things, and he can get reversed in a heartbeat. And that's like a baseball player has their RBI. They know where their stats are. What are they batting today? But the judges don't like to get reversed because it goes against their averages. But the impeachment process is way too premature right now. And I know that even Trump called for it. I think that was rhetoric. But now we find out that this freshman senator or congressman from Texas thought it'd be a cool idea to drop articles of impeachment, and that's asinine and immature. Mm-hmm. Because you haven't even had a chance to appeal it yet.
Yeah.
So you file the appeal first, dude. And then if you find out that the guy abused his discretion in such a way that is so egregious and beyond the pale that a reasonable judge would never have done that, then maybe you consider. Listen, I love the law, and the law can never be blind if it is constantly under assault. That's why we took such offense when Roe v. Wade and all that. We had people picketing the judges' houses. You're not supposed to be threatening action against a sitting judge who's presiding over a case. That congressman is technically trying to hold something over that judge's case to influence his actions in a case that is still pending before that judge. God, I'm on a roll right now.
It's a good conversation.
How much caffeine have I had?
I think it's a very important conversation, and I hope, like I said, soon the Supreme Court helps sort all this out. But we'll see.
Are we going to take a break?
Sure.
I guess we should. Let's take a break. We'll take a break right now. We'll come right back, and I'll get some of those text messages that are sitting there in my queue. And then coming up top of the hour, we have Congressman Dale Strong calling in. He is quoted as saying, Those Democrats, those left-wing liberals that are trying to do these angry town halls, they're just mad because Trump won. It's a great point. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. Jeff from Indiana checking in on the text lines. He says, Phil, what I'm wanting to know is all those things that never made the news that nobody knows about, like how close we came to nuclear Armageddon, people that disappeared and were never heard from again. That's the kind of things I want to know, the things the news never reported on. I don't even know what I don't know, Jeff. But I do believe that if we knew how close some things were, it would probably send people into paroxysms. We'd have to have mass Xanax distributions or something around the nation if they knew how close that the Cuban Missile Crisis came to Armageddon or something else. John from Huntsville says, Phil, fantastic monologue and happy Taco Tuesday. Did we play the sound effect?
We did.
We did. That's right. We did.
It was a little bit delayed as I.
That's right, because I was hot micing over here.
But we did play, yes.
Phil, fantastic monologue, says John from Huntsville, and happy Taco Tuesday. Also, JP, I wanted you to know that your co-host of the bench, off the bench, joined our JP Madness bracket.
Yep, I sent him the link to join. So now we got me, Kelsey, and John Paul.
Outstanding. Hey, Dennis from Madison's brand spanking new in the text line. He's a retired U.S. Army major. Appreciate your service, Dennis. Thank you for joining us. He says, who was that Marine Lieutenant Colonel that was put in jail for speaking out about the withdrawal from Afghanistan? Bring him back on active duty to run the investigation. You know what? His name's on the tip of my tongue. I was just looking him up the other day to see if he was going to try and get his career back, and I know there was even talk about it. If you can find that for me, you find it?
I'll look it up right now.
All right, yeah, I'm gonna. Dennis, thanks for joining us. I will find that. But yeah, I was checking into that guy just like a week or two ago, and his name escapes me right now. Brandon spanking new. Also in the text line, we need to know who you are and where you're from. Area code 303 says, love listening to your show. Something's going on with your mic. When you talk, that sounds like it's a broken speaker. Huh. Only happens when Phil's talking. Huh. Ads are good. Lead-in is good. Okay. I don't know how to describe that, but we'll check it out. Thank you very much. If it's still doing it, text us and tell me. Brian from Decatur says, are you aware of any decisions made by the Trump administration that have not been overturned by some hyper-liberal judge somewhere? Off the top of my head, no. But I would love to believe that since he signed like over 100 executive orders, that there's some of them that are still good. Also, brand spanking new in the text lines is Wild Bill. Wild Bill from Somerville. Appreciate you, Wild Bill. He says, first-time texter. I can imagine Joe Biden's staff had him sign some stuff the way Radar O'Reilly had Colonel Blake sign his. I know. I've thought that many times. What am I signing, Radar? Sir, these are the forms that authorize you to sign forms that order more forms that require signing. Thank you, Radar. Thank you.
So I think the Marine, his name is Stuart Scheller, who spoke out against the Afghanistan withdrawal.
Marine Lieutenant Colonel?
Yes.
Lost his battalion command?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't recall his name being Scheller, but that does sound familiar, so maybe it was.
Yeah.
Chris from Sterrett, Alabama says, great monologue. He says, Auto A+, I held a TS-SCI for 14 years. Thank you. He said, there are things that are not for general consumption. However, the Dems have hidden things behind classifications that must be exposed. Love your show. Go Navy. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for your service. Thanks for being a TS-SCI guy. And then Butters is checking in. Butters from Rainbow City says, this week's poll, is it okay for Elon to get government contracts? Go check it out on the Rightside Report. If you want to get the Rightside Report and you're not already getting it daily in your emails, just text the word newsletter. Just single word newsletter to 833-687-4448. We'll get you signed up right away. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. Congressman Dale Strong calling in next.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Right Side Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Right Side studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national covering down on all the issues. And like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2 here on a Taco Tuesday, because it's always about food. Taco Tuesday, we're moving it forward, and I just told him off the air a moment ago, our next guest, that it's been such a target-rich environment for news and commentary right now that I've not even gotten to my notes yet. But let me just stop talking myself and bring on a guest. Congressman Dale Strong represents Alabama's 5th Congressional District. He's part of the U.S. delegation that we send to D.C. to do work on our behalf. He is part of our Republican delegation, and he represents the Huntsville, North Alabama area, and he's on the line as we speak. Congressman Dale Strong, how you doing?
Phil, it's great to be with you again.
Well, thank you for making time. I know you've been super busy attending these angry town halls that liberal groups like Indivisible demand that you show up at so they can scream at you for a while.
Yeah, we cut a ribbon today right outside of Gate 9, Redstone Arsenal, and look up, and we got protesters protesting against 200 high-paying jobs in North Alabama. They don't like Trump. They don't like Elon Musk. They don't like the waste, fraud, and abuse that's been revealed to the American people. But if this is what it takes to clean up America, so be it.
Well, absolutely, so be it. Hey, let me ask you this. This group Indivisible, which we have, learned has been partially funded by Soros, they're the people that live on anger. I call them part of the anger industrial complex. I mean, they literally raise money on nothing but anger and fear. They've been saying that they're demanding you show up and then trying to create some kind of firestorm about you not being there at the place where they demanded. Did they ever communicate with you? Did they call you and ask for an opportunity? Did they ask what your schedule was? Did they do anything respectful of the process?
They sent a card to my office saying this is when I would show up or whatever it is. That's not how it works here.
No.
I think the people of the 5th Congressional District appreciate how I do business. I think I've had 7, 8, 9 events today. I've been in multiple different counties doing everything from announcing new jobs to meeting with law enforcement, firefighters, just go down the list. But I'll tell you this right here, this republic is alive and well, and we have elections for Congress every 2 years. My name would be on the ballot, and if the people don't like the way that what we're doing in Washington, I'm a staunch supporter of President Trump. Matter of fact, was in the Oval Office with he and J.D. Vance last week, and I can promise you I'm going to spend my time talking about Marshall Space Flight Center, talking about space launch systems. I also want to talk about Space Command because let me tell you something. That's the conversation that I was talking to the president about our capabilities here in North Alabama and where Joe Biden decided to award it to Colorado to try to pick up a few votes. Donald Trump's going to make the decision based on what's best for national security, and I feel more than comfortable that, Space Command's coming to North Alabama and Redstone Arsenal.
All right, so I hear the tail end of that, but don't tease us. Give us more details. So what are you thinking? Because Space Command, Colorado kind of jumped in there and backdoored the situation, but we have always won every review. What kind of timeline are we looking at, and when do you think he'll pull the trigger on that? Because I would have thought he'd almost made it by now.
Well, you hit it on the head. 21 categories were evaluated to determine what was best for national security. It was done not once, but twice, and on both occasions, Redstone Arsenal won, saying that it was best for national security, the cost to construct, the cost to maintain, education level, go down the list. We checked every category. The president has options. Number one, he has executive orders. Number two, which I think is the direction that he will go, he's going to seat the Secretary of the Air Force. And by law, the Secretary of the Air Force is who is supposed to make this decision.
Okay.
But what I believe will happen is they're going to concur with what Secretary Kendall, the previous Secretary of the Air Force, did. He recommended Redstone Arsenal. He served as the Secretary of the Air Force for Trump. He served under Biden, and now a new secretary will be seated, and I feel more than comfortable based on the evaluation of all these different categories and what is best for national security, that the Rocket City once again will win, and that we'll be going vertical within a matter of months.
I think that will have ramifications, even bigger than Huntsville. I mean, I think Madison, Decatur, Athens, all the surrounding outlying areas, even as far into the other reaches of your district, are going to feel the effects of that. Plus, I would imagine we're looking at upwards of 500 to 1,000 potential FBI employees coming down.
Absolutely. You look at Space Command, 1,400 to 1,700 new jobs, high-paying jobs with the 3,000 job spinoff, and then you start looking. The president last week announced that 500 additional FBI jobs would be relocated out of the Beltway, and that's exactly what the president campaigned on. Said they were going to break up the FBI, get it out to the states instead of having everybody in D.C. and Virginia, and so we'll be the beneficiary of that. So you look at it, about 2,300 in seats right now. Another couple thousand will be coming with the cyber wing of that, and then the additional 500 that the president announced last week, and then I believe there will be some other announcements in the days ahead. But you think about Iron Dome, that right there is our language right here in North Alabama, which will soon be Gold Dome. That right there will be jobs for our area. So we're growing by leap years.
I think our state will be better because of it. At the same time, people don't realize to the extent that the space industry and the tech industry and the defense industry, that the North Alabama region has become a hub for all three, really for decades, but even more so in the last 10 years.
Yeah, and you look at it, our labor shed comes from a 17-county region in North Alabama and southern Tennessee, so it's going to float all boats, and that workforce is phenomenal. And that's the biggest thing as a congressman that I do is talking about our capabilities, what we do, what we're capable of doing, and what hits in the wheelhouse for us. And so you think about it, ATF, FBI, Space Command, Marshall Space Flight Center, you just go down the list. We're perfectly positioned not only for today, but also the days ahead. And I think we've got the right leader at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and I've enjoyed getting to know him even better.
Well, so let me ask you this. There's some people that don't enjoy getting to know him, and they seem to always sit on a bench somewhere, like in the federal district court. And I'm an attorney. I have a deep respect for the law. I'm not one who rushes to the idea of impeachment. I think the judges can get things wrong and just be appealed as opposed to impeached. But I'm also looking at the great disparity right now. I saw a stat earlier today that said that Trump has now been enjoined by federal district court judges 6 times more than any other president in the last 20 years. And he's only been in office a little over 4 years. We're talking about Obama had I think 12 in 8 years. Trump has had now somewhere in the neighborhood of 79, I believe it is. Federal district court judges are enjoining everything.
They stepped in again just in a matter of hours ago for this USAID.
Yeah.
Think about it, Phil. Do you think the American taxpayer wants to spend $20 million to take Sesame Street to Iraq?
No.
$9 million ended up with terrorists in Syria, millions going to the LGBTQ empowerment program in Serbia, and activist judges trying to block Venezuela gangs from being deported. What in the world is going on? The American people have had all of this garbage that they're going to put up with, and I promise you, I think the Democratic Party is destroying itself right before our eyes.
Well, and I think that one of the things that's going to wind up happening, Congressman, and this is your lane, but I'm going to just ask, do you see some of these executive orders becoming legislative action? Like at some point, we're going to put these things into law so that a future president does not have to worry about executive orders because it's already embedded in the law.
You better believe it's going to be codified, and we're going to make it law. I can't wait. Finally got the 25 budget behind us. Nobody likes CRs. The president did what he had to do. He said, pass the CR. Let's get to 26. Let's get a budget, get these 12 bills across the goal line. And I think that the Republican Party is galvanized after that vote the other night.
Yeah.
You watched as it got pretty crazy, but I'm just telling you right now, Mike Johnson deserves a lot of credit. And you think about it, Phil, just in the last several months, we've had leadership here in North Alabama The Speaker of the House has been here twice since I've been in Congress. The Majority Leader has been here. Ken Calvert, you think, was just here this week. He was here this week. And you think about it, Appropriations Defense Subcommittee, they get it. Whenever they come to Huntsville, you take them back to the airport, and they're sitting here going, it's unbelievable the economy that has been built here. I attribute that to the governor, our legislator. You start looking at the mayors across North Alabama. It's a team effort, and without everybody working together, we never could have realized this point in time. And I still believe that our finest hours are still ahead.
Well, and I agree with you, Congressman. And listen, before you go, there's one other thing that's in the news right now, and that's the use of the Autopen in the Biden administration. We're beginning to learn more and more that perhaps there were staff members who were making use of the Autopen to do preemptive pardons, to issue any number of presidential decrees. What's the mood? I'm not asking for legislative action. What's the mood in D.C. about all that?
He couldn't hold the pen up. I mean, people talk about, well, they covered it in the last couple of months. I'm telling you, from the first time I got there, I was in the group of 20 freshmen that were invited to the White House. Out of respect for the office, I went. I felt sorry for him. He couldn't carry on a conversation further than your name and his name. He struggled. It's pitiful what has occurred. And then you look at what happened on the world stage during this point.
Yeah.
You look at what happened, and it's because of the weakness at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Take a look at the southern border right now. Unbelievable. It shows where there's a will, there's a way. Donald Trump was right. He went and closed that border. America is safer because of it. And look, fentanyl is not coming across the border anywhere close to the level it was. So whether you like Donald Trump or not, America is safer because of his policies and what he has done in the first 60, 70 days he's been in office.
Well, it's been a dynamic 60 to 70 days. It absolutely has. And I think he's done more there than Biden even thought about for 4 years. But listen, Congressman, we appreciate you. Thanks for making time for us. And yeah, if you decide to go to one of those angry town halls, let me know. But in the meantime, take care and thanks very much.
Y'all have a great day.
All right, thank you. Congressman Dale Strong making time for us. He's representing Alabama's northern tier, the 5th District. And I would dare say that even though there are certainly other districts in the state of Alabama, and I live in the 4th, actually it's moved over to Mike Rogers' district with the realignments, but there's great things happening in our state, and there's great things happening northward of us in Tennessee. But Alabama's 5th Congressional District is the hub of all things growth right now. It is the growth epicenter of the Southeast, not just Alabama, but the Southeast United States. It's amazing what's happening in the entire Huntsville, North Alabama region. And I have to extend that out. It's not just Huntsville. It's Huntsville, all of Madison County. It's Marshall. It's moving over into Athens and Limestone County over to the Shoals. And literally North Alabama is there are whole states that wish they had the economy of just North Alabama. All right, let's take it to a break. We'll take a break right now. We'll come right back, and then we'll jump on in because I've actually got dippers that I haven't even started yet. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Pulling pins on truth grenades in here. That's what we're doing. Going to the text lines real quick. Catch a few of those. Jenny from Decatur said, thankful for Representative Dale Strong. This Alabamian and my entire family appreciate you. Well, there you go. She also had a previous text right before that. She said, how is it that Biden paid off so many people's student loans after the Supreme Court ruled that he could not? I personally know 3 people that had their student loans forgiven. I don't understand how he gets away with so much. And then there's judges that don't care at all about American safety from known criminals that are being removed from America. Jenny, if I had the answer to that, I would already have a national radio show. I mean, it's that perplexing. It just really is.
Well, there's that one clip of AOC saying, maybe we should just ignore some judges' rulings. So now that Trump is not even ignoring them, he's just simply appealing, doing everything that he's legally allowed to do, and all of a sudden he's a fascist,
AOC is proof positive that anybody can get elected in the United States.
And you know what? If she's considered the Democrat leader right now, I think that's great news for us.
I don't think she's a Democrat. I mean, I know that there's talk about her.
Yeah.
I think that's clickbait talk. I think that most of the Democrat establishment puts up with her, and they see her as someone that they need. She's their foil. She's their person who actually will go say the things that no one else will say. And she'll also think she's right when she says it, which is crazy. But I think by and large, she's a chucklehead, and most of them realize it.
Yeah. I hope that they put her out there, though.
I say that. Maybe I'm just giving them too much credit.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, I think you are.
John from Brownsboro says Biden was wide open and honest when he gave the address and acknowledged the existence of aliens and UFOs. Okay. To prove his point, he failed to identify a Chinese spy balloon until it traversed the country and gathered his intel. Then he distributed aliens to every community in the nation to roam free. Okay. I didn't know where we were. I got aliens and then I got illegal aliens. And anyway, thank you, John. Appreciate you. Chris from Athens, what is Dale Strong doing to help mitigate school overcrowding, possible power grid issues, overland transportation issues? These are all issues not only Democrats, but us Republicans are concerned with, as it seems the Washington delegation keeps saying we're bringing this and that to North Alabama, but never hear them say anything about what they're doing to get the area ready to be it with the state, TVA and other things. All right, so all right. Is the music playing? Do I hear it playing in the background? The bottom line is this, Chris. Some of that happens. Some of it is you build it, they will come. But I will also tell you that you won't be expending tax dollars until you know you have what I would call the client base, if you will. When the tax base expands because of some major event like moving thousands of federal employees into Redstone Arsenal, you're going to see an immediate infrastructure plan being put in place. You're going to see an immediate upgrade of the capabilities in the electrical system. But because it takes a huge amount of money to do that, my experience in state government is they oftentimes nowadays won't do it as an incentive. They'll do it as if you come, we will build it. So it's gonna happen. You watch. Pretty soon you're gonna be aggravated, Chris, because you're gonna have cones on 565 as they widen it. Just saying. Wiley from Gunnersville says, speaking of the Autopen, how is its use controlled? Surely it involves at least a CAT card, but more likely a SIPR token and other secure access protocols. You know what, Wiley, it's a great question. I don't know. I do know I've got an article here in my stack that says that the Trump administration put some serious protocols in place that apparently weren't there in the last administration. We'll dive right into that. The Autopen Presidency coming up next. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Goes like from Huntsville all the way back on over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back on over to Gadsden. I mean all the way down to that prettiest little town on the plains called Auburn. And yes, stretching across the border then to Fort Benning. It is called Fort Benning now. Fort Benning, Georgia. And even big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in, just for good measure. All right, listen, I got several text messages, but I've also got one phone call that I will take before I change gears here, talking about the previous topic. So let me just grab it real quick. Robert from Athens. Hey, Robert, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Phil.
Good. What's on your mind?
I would love to take these judges on an all-expense paid Alabama boat ride. For free, all expense.
Is that similar to the Missouri boat ride from Outlaw Josie Wales?
Well, I guess it could be because most of my family's from Missouri, so that would do good too.
Yeah, there's and sooner or later there's going to be something's going to have to be said about what is judicial discretion and what is just activism, because when you look at how much is coming against Trump, it feels like activism.
They need to go ahead and take it to the Supreme Court and get it over with instead of dragging this stuff out some way.
Yeah. Well, and some of these have already gone and some have come back, and then we've got others that I think are about to go. The question is, will the court take it up? And then we got to keep our eye on John Roberts. He's like a moving target when it comes to whether he's conservative or not. Hey, Robert, thanks for the call, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
What else have I got here? Roughly in from Huntsville checking in, just letting us know the astronauts are coming home. Yes, indeed. It said, don't you think that after interview the people who I guess they're talking about the astronauts, they should always add no thanks to Joe Biden? Yes, they should. I got a long text from Lisa from Huntsville about taxing on prescriptions, which is not on topic.
So she says she got a weird, I think she copy and pasted the text she got. She got a weird text about that, yeah.
I see what's happening. Oh, this is the thing about pharmacy benefit managers and all that. And so we're going to dig into that here pretty soon because it's becoming a thing. It's becoming a thing nationwide, too. And then lastly, Chris from Athens again says, Colonel Williams, I appreciate the clarification. Doesn't seem that many people provide a lot of clarification on this kind of stuff. Once again, love the show. Always nice when you dive a little deeper about some things that happen behind the scenes of government. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you, man. And we will talk more about it. All right, let me dive on in here. This is actually Dipper number one.
We had a 3-dipper day yesterday,
we did.
I think you earned a little leeway.
Why, thank
today.
you, JP.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Can I have some applause? Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Very good. All right. Listen. The Autopen presidency. First of all, just keep in mind, everybody kind of understands it, but I'll say it again anyway. The Autopen is actually a machine that once you program the president's signature, the machine can then recreate it in live ink, like wet ink. So you're not just getting a carbon copy like a copier. You're getting something that has wet ink on it because that means more. It feels legit. And the president has to consciously provide his signature for it to be entered into the machine for use. This has been around for a while, by the way. My recollection was it goes back to, I think Lyndon Johnson maybe was the first president, maybe even Eisenhower were the first ones to use the Autopen. It's not unknown. It's not illegal. But this sometimes falls into the realm of just because you can doesn't mean you should. You know what I'm saying? So we got a real problem right now because a study came out. The Heritage Foundation did this. A study came out I think it was last week. It was. Just last week, the Heritage Foundation released a report saying that they had obtained images of everything that Biden signed in official capacity to the extent they could for the entire 4 years he was in office. And it appears that 90+% of what he signed was Autopen. Whoa. Okay, that's not what we expect. That is absolutely not what we expect. I mean, it was everything from executive orders and presidential decrees and things like the last-minute pardons for members of his own family and Fauci and General Milley and members of the January 6th committee, all of this stuff. They even found, too, that he pardoned 6 criminals using Autopen with the document saying signed at the city of Washington while he was vacationing and golfing in the U.S. Virgin Islands, which means, okay, you didn't do it. You weren't even there. You weren't even in the Oval Office to say, yeah, I'm busy with the Prime Minister of so-and-so country, so how about you use the Autopen on that one? He didn't do it. This is a mess, y'all. And it's called to question a lot of what he did. There's already so much out there about whether or not he was cognitively impaired. I'm going to go ahead and do the thing I have to do again. I have to say it because I'm an attorney. It would be inappropriate for me. It would be unethical for me to know that there's a law in place about certain things and not speak to it. So I won't rush off into rhetoric. I'll first say a decision or a determination of incompetence is a judicial determination. You and I can watch him and go, oh boy, ain't right. But Phil, the attorney, can't say that person is now incompetent because I understand that has to go before a probate court. And there has to be a judicial determination, which is based upon medical review and based upon evidence provided to the court. And then they have to appoint a guardian ad litem to make sure he has actual representation. So all these things have to happen. And I get that. But you and I both know, oh boy, ain't right. I mean, the reality is Biden was an impaired individual and no one can say otherwise. So even though we don't have a judicial determination of incompetency to legally stand upon to say those documents shouldn't be allowed to count, we can now couple what we do know about his obvious decline, even while he was you could see it while he was in office. I mean, the Biden that we saw running in 2020, who was already goofy and having trouble, was far and away worse by the time we got to him leaving office in early 2025. I mean, the decline was notable right up to the debate in June of last year. So how is it then that all these Autopen signatures got done? How does this work? Well, apparently there were people that had the authority to allegedly do it. Hang on, I've got one in here real quick. Let me find it. Greg Jarrett, who is the Fox News legal analyst. Yeah, here it is. Greg Jarrett. He made a great point on this. He said, this is Dateline today, actually. He says, we're going to wind up having to have a whistleblower. So, and I agree. I think I said that to Charlene the other night. It's not going to work. This thing is not going to get unraveled fully until someone is willing to be a whistleblower. Now, we already have articles where anonymous sources in the Biden administration's staff are quoted as saying blank, but it's still being listed as anonymous sources. Until we get a true whistleblower, someone who comes forward in either under duress, like being pressured with, their own indictment, says, look, I'll give you some information if you'll give me a break. That happens all the time. Or someone who just says, I can't sleep at night knowing what I know, and they come forward. But Greg Jarrett points out, until we get a whistleblower with what he called incriminating information to support the claims that Joe Biden's pardons are void, they're still going to stand. But then he said this point. He said, using an Autopen is perfectly legal. He said presidents have used it going back to, he said, Harry Truman, and maybe before. He said, as long as there is consent and authorization. Now we get to the point. Consent and authorization. He said consent is defined by 3 things, and he's right. Consent has to be voluntary, willing, and conscious. In other words, someone didn't twist his arm, someone didn't tell him what to say, and he was not so impaired that he couldn't understand it, and that he was conscious. In other words, he was literally aware of and involved in the decision making. And if you find that those things weren't there, you got a real problem. So let me dive a little deeper in my stack. I'll pull another one out. Here it is. Do you remember this story? I thought of this morning. This is what I do. I prepare things for you guys so you don't have to go find it. By the way, I will say this. All our resources, when you hear me rattle paper, if you go to our website, I just thought of this, rightsidemedia.org. If you go to rightsidemedia.org and you click on the live stream and you're like watching me sitting in studio right now, talking and opining and JP clicking in with me and guests and all that, If you're watching the live stream, right below the live stream, it says resources. Every article that I rattle is there for you in case you want to go find it yourself. All right. Back in January of this year, I mean, one of his last minute moves, allegedly, was the commutation of multiple sentences and, oh, by the way, the pardon of multiple others from being sentenced. The commutations are where he takes and downgrades a sentence. And if you remember, he took virtually everybody who was on federal death row and he commuted their sentences to life in prison. Basically took the death penalty off the table. How about this? When those happen, the commutation of a sentence or the pardon of someone who could be criminally liable for something or maybe has already been indicted or convicted. When you commute or pardon, it usually is something that rose to your attention because someone has now petitioned the president to do so. Happens in governor's offices too. You petition for mercy and clemency from the office of the executive, in this case, the president. You don't just dream it up on your own. The president doesn't wake up in the morning and go, I feel like I'm going to find somebody named John Smith who needs a commutation. It doesn't work that way. The president doesn't roll over in bed and go, you know, I'm just thinking, I like the idea of pardoning a murderer. It doesn't work that way. It's supposed to be a case-by-case basis, reviewed upon the petition of someone. And oh, by the way, guess what? There's actually someone called a pardon attorney. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. There's a pardon attorney in the Department of Justice. It's a pretty important position. But let me go back to what happened in January. Story here I pulled off of NBC. Phil, did you go to NBC? I did. NBC, January 6th. 2 prisoners among the 37 federal inmates whose death sentences were commuted by President Biden have taken an unusual stance. They're refusing to sign the paperwork accepting the clemency position. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. I thought all of these were petitions. I thought they all wanted it. I thought they came to the president going, please, Mr. President, use the power granted to you in the authority of the presidency and under the Constitution to grant clemency. No. You got 2 of them right here that didn't even want it. Why would that be? Because they're still appealing their sentences. They believe they have the opportunity to use the fact that it's a death penalty to pursue additional appeals of their sentencing in general. And when he took the death penalty off, it meant that they lost part of their appeal process. And these guys are like, wait a minute. No. How do you have a commutation of a sentence if the people whose sentence you're commuting did not even want it? You get what I'm saying? It's obvious that you had somebody batching these things up in the office of the president and creating something out of whole cloth that the people who are being pardoned or commuted did not even seek on their own.
Yeah, if you think pardoning those folks is pretty nuts, just wait till you see Joe Biden's reaction when he find out he did that. Probably just like ours.
Yeah, but Joe, this guy named Shannon Nagofsky and Lynn Davis, the other dude in Terre Haute, Indiana, they don't want your commutations. I never pardoned them.
Who is that?
Yeah, who's that? What are you trying to say to me? Is it pudding time yet? I mean, so, by the way, I enjoyed some pudding the other night, and I couldn't help think about the irony that I've used that joke. And anyway, the bottom line is this. There ain't no way in the world every one of these was a case-by-case basis brought to the president because it was important to those on the outside. This is activist, and when you know you have activist mentality using the Autopen, because these were apparently done by Autopen. When you I'm building a circumstantial case here. I'm lawyering up for you. I am building. This is not inadmissible. This goes to what we call the pattern and practice in the courtroom. I think that I'm creating an admissibility on the basis of pattern and practice. And I think what we're looking at is the standard business practice in the Biden White House was activism. And I think we're looking at it right now, and that the Autopen should be questioned. Oh, by the way, the circumstantial framework of this pattern and practice that I'm building includes the fact that not even everybody who received the benefit of these signatures had ever sought it. which means that someone in the White House had to have been the one who dreamed it up. When I get back from this break, I'm going to tell you about the pardon attorney. That's a thing. There's an actual pardon attorney, like somebody who's got a job just to review these. And I'm thinking, why do you have the job? We got an Autopen. Why do we need you? Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. All right, so I'm in this this dipper, the Autopen Presidency. I just gave you some pretty dynamic analysis a moment ago. That the circumstantial evidence is mounting that the Autopen was being abused. In part because we can see that some of the people who got the benefit of the Autopen for major pieces of executive action didn't even want it. They didn't ask for it. In fact, they're rejecting it. What does that tell you? That there had to be an activist in the White House putting this together as opposed to somebody else on the outside saying, would you please? There is also the office of the of the pardon attorney. I'd never heard of this. I would have assumed it existed, but I didn't realize it had a separate office. I mean, I'd like to believe that none of these pardons and other acts of clemency have any basis outside of, strong legal review. So we got an article here from Red State. It's the only place that I've seen report this. They say they originally published this about a week ago, and they decided to republish it in the wake of all the Autopen controversy. Because what they reported before the Autopen report came out from the Heritage Foundation, what they reported about 2 weeks ago is that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, works for Pam Bondi, on his second day in office, he sent a written notice of termination to an attorney named Liz Oyer. She's the pardon attorney in the DOJ. So he was basically, this was, okay, first of all, the fact that he did it on day 2, I mean, old boy didn't even know where the bathrooms were in the building yet. And he's already issuing a letter of termination by name to a single individual named Liz Oyer, who is a pardon attorney in the DOJ. It says the pardon attorney is one of these senior executive service positions. So it's an SES position. Those of y'all in government service, that's pretty senior. Once you hit SES, you're a careerist. You've got senior rank. This is a top position that serves in an advisory role, basically. It receives pardon applications from current federal inmates and those who've already served their sentences. And this pardon attorney, like it sounds, is the one who investigates each one and provides a case-by-case legal review. Well, she was appointed by Merrick Garland. Oh, good. Yay. I'm already losing faith in her position. So Liz Oyer was the pardon attorney appointed by Merrick Garland in 2022. Guess what her career had been before that? She was a criminal defense attorney, meaning she was the ones helping get criminals, lighter sentencing or plea deals or trying to defend their interests. And there's a place for that. There absolutely is. And I respect it. And I've got friends who are criminal defense attorneys. But when I see someone who is a career assistant federal defender, a federal defender in the District of Maryland, what does that mean? They are the court appointed. They are the ones who spend their career helping anybody and everybody deal with their sentences. She's also spent some time as a partnership in a big firm where she worked in their criminal defense firm. And she was escorted out of the building without notice. In other words, there's probably an investigation going on of some type, and they did not want her to have a chance to delete files. Day 2, the boss comes in, sends her a by name, and has the security escort her out of the building. More on this when I get back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. The Autopen Presidency. We'll unpack it. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We will be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number three on a Taco Tuesday. So I'm wrapping this topic of the Autopen presidency. I'll give you a couple of quick recaps to bring us back to where I'm about to go next. Autopen is legal, but it does require conscious consent and authority given by the president for someone to exercise the use of the machine. So there's that. Do we have that? We don't know. But what we do know is there were at least 6 of his pardons that were signed with the document itself saying signed in Washington, D.C. while he was vacationing in the Virgin Islands playing golf. So, makes you wonder. We have no way of knowing if Biden is truly what they would judge in a court of law to be mentally incompetent. We can look at him and say he's certainly uninspiring. He certainly has declined. We can certainly see how tired and how incapable he appears to be. But the actual adjudication of incompetency is not before us, so we can't use that to stand on in a legal sense. In other words, we can't go in there and say, Biden has now been declared incompetent by a court of adequate jurisdiction. Therefore, all those pardons and commutations and executive orders are null and void. We can look at it and feel that way, but legally speaking, we're not there yet. So we have to build the circumstantial case around it. In the absence of a true ruling of competency, what do we know about this? Well, we know that he wasn't present when some of them were signed. We can tell that from those 6. We know that 90% of them, like vastly more than any other president that we know of in modern history, have been signed by Autopen. We know that from a recent study that was provided to the world by the Heritage Foundation. We also know, oh, by the way, that there are 2 prisoners on federal death row who are rejecting the commutation of their sentence by Biden, signed by Autopen, because they say they never wanted it. They don't want it. So how did it come to be? Well, that seems to imply that there were activists in the White House helping batch together agenda items as opposed to answering true petitions. And then I told you right for the break that the pardon attorney, the one who was supposed to review all of these things under the Department of Justice guidelines on a case-by-case basis and provide legal review to accompany each petition for pardon to the president, the pardon attorney was literally dismissed from her job by name and escorted out of the building on the second day of the seating of the new Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General. Okay, let's talk about this. She was escorted out of the building, which seems to imply that there was some concern about what would happen if she was given free rein to clean up her office and work her way out of the building on her own time. In other words, they didn't want her shredding or deleting anything. They didn't want her downloading anything. They didn't want her taking something with her she shouldn't have. They didn't want her taking files and putting them back where they shouldn't have been before. So Pam Oyer is gone. Is it Pam Oyer? Liz Oyer. Liz Oyer is gone. But here's the other thing. Something we're going to have to deal with and overcome because we can't just do away with these things. Most of the times, the issuance of a presidential pardon, which is one of the big things we're looking at here, like, Mark Milley and Hunter Biden and all the others, the January 6th Commission, those are considered non-justiciable. That's just a fancy way of saying you can't take those to court. Those are non-justiciable. Presidential pardons are deemed to be an inherent power of the executive branch. The office of the presidency is vested with that power. It's non-justiciable. You can't just look at it and go, I'm sorry, I reject that. I'm taking that to court. No, it doesn't work that way. You can't do that. Absent some of what we already talked about. So 2 issues now are there which may provide basis for the inquiry. Was there, in fact, dementia? Was there, in fact, an inability to express consent and grant authority for the use of the Autopen? And the other is the ongoing analysis of the Autopen is showing that it would have been physically impossible for the president to have been present and to grant authority. Now, it's the modern world. It's the age of communication. You can text the guy while he's playing on a golf course in the Virgin Islands. But did they? It's going to take us it's going to literally take a whistleblower to break that open. Here's the thing. It makes you wonder, though, okay, we still have an Autopen, right? We do. New York Post is reporting that despite everything I just said, the Autopen still exists. It does. But the Trump White House is handling it entirely differently. And they should. So New York Post is reporting that this is what Dateline of the story is what? Hang on, let me turn back my page. Dateline, New York Post, Dateline, Saturday. Actually Friday, it was Friday. An internal memo drafted last Thursday by Trump Staff Secretary William Sharf. If you watch Trump, sitting at the Resolute desk in the Oval Office signing executive orders as a guy who always hands them to him, Mr. President, this is the one that does so-and-so. That's a guy named William Sharf. He's the Special Staff Secretary. And he has laid out the restrictive current use of the Autopen. He says, number one, we will not, this is in quotes, we do not use the Autopen for documents that exercise the power of the presidency. So, for example, he says, we do not use the Autopen for executive orders, for presidential memorandums, for special decisions, for nominations, appointments, orders, or commissions, or bills. In other words, if you're exercising the true power of the presidency, the Trump administration will not allow the Autopen. You will get that to the man himself. He will sign it. He also says we don't use the Autopen for just even routine purposes, like we don't use it to invite foreign leaders to the White House. The president believes he should personally sign those. I love that. I'm good with that. That feels very conscious. It feels very deliberate. It feels very real. It says we will occasionally use the Autopen when a single document requires multiple presidential signatures or when multiple copies of the single document require signing, but only after the president personally signed off the first time and only at his direction. It does say that there will be times when the Autopen will be used for what they consider to be things like congratulatory messages, birthday wishes, things like that from the Office of the Presidency where these are being issued out. But the Trump administration has made it very, very clear. The Autopen abuse stops now. All right, that's huge. I mean, I just maybe it just fascinates me. I don't know. Maybe because I'm an attorney and I see documents and I know the value of signature, the value of notary, the value of witnessed testimony, the value of what it means to actually put something to paper, and the fact that even in today's digital age, there are times when wet ink is more important than digital. It just is. Because it may be old school, but it's real school.
I think it just points to, though, and illustrates even more, like how little Joe Biden may have been doing in his own presidency. Because whoever has access to the Autopen, you can do whatever you want.
That's exactly right.
I think, and I know we've talked about it over and over again, but just I think the instance with Mike Johnson in the office where he didn't know he was doing stuff, executive orders, like I think that coupled with us finding out how many of his orders were done by Autopen just proves to show even more that there were people behind the scenes, staffers that were actually making decisions instead of him.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm trying to find one of my articles that I don't think I dove into in as far enough. Actually, here it is. Biden sources suspect that a key aide may have been the abuse of the Autopen. So this is one of those unnamed sources say kind of thing. It's also a New York Post article, and it outlined, and I think her name was Nanda Tunin. I think Nanda Tunin was considered to be the one who was oftentimes doing this, and people were really worried about how far afield she was getting, but she was also one of those staffers who the junior staff felt like they couldn't cross her. They would be putting themselves at risk. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, there's important things that happen in life, and sometimes you got to put yourself at risk. Just saying. So I'm hoping we find a whistleblower. Let me get a few text messages before I go to the break and come back with the next dipper. Ken from Harvest says, in light of recent discoveries, a new nickname is in order. Sleepy Joe ought to be Autopen Joe. I am with you, Ken from Harvest.
Did you see the meme Trump put out on his Truth Social? It had like the picture of Trump's first portrait, and then in the middle between, the two Trump portraits was just a portrait of an Autopen. It's like, we had an Autopen president.
I did see that. Replacing the official portrait of Biden with an Autopen.
It's sad but true.
It's oh God. The things that we avoided by getting him out of office. There's no telling what could have happened if there had been a second round, or for that matter, for a Kamala Harris. Gary from Decatur says, I'm sorry, but nothing's going to happen with this Autopen scandal, as the Republicans will discover it was not legally done by his staffers and representatives. But there's nothing we can do now but see that it won't happen again in the future. Democrats always seem to get away. Okay, so here's one thing that's out there, Gary. One of the attorney generals, I believe it was Missouri, maybe it was Kansas, has already filed suit on this and demanded an investigation because, he points out, the states are stuck with the results. Because these people that are being pardoned and released into the communities come back to their states. Some of them could be retried under state law in the absence of federal prosecution. And the AGs want to know, what do we do? Is it legit? Plus, you also have executive orders that impacted things like everything from schools to funding to God knows what. And it impacted the states. And so the attorney generals are saying, it's not just that it's done, we're still living with it. And so, Gary, that's the one thing I will say is the impact of what happened with these signatures is still being felt. Can we go back and undo the signature? No. But can we find out whether or not the impacts should still be felt by people, or can we stop the impacts? I say stop the impacts. Mike from Florence says, when I hear Biden and pudding packs are the last thing that come to mind. I said pull-ups are usually the first. Oh, Lord. Charles from Decatur says, man, I told my two sisters I was thinking about running for city council. They laughed at me. I told my dad, said he'd be my campaign manager. That's the support everyone needs from parents. Charles from Decatur. Charles, go for it, brother. It never happens unless you just step out there and just go all in. Get neck deep, brother. Get neck deep. And then Tom with all the kids from Huntsville. Tom with all the kids says, back in the mid-'90s when I was an adjutant, there was talk about official signatures being blue ink only, and then color printers became a big thing. Yeah, we had to actually switch our notary stamps to stamp, actually, not the press kind where it presses into the paper, because you're sending so much stuff by either digital copy or fax, and you can't see the press down on that. We got to where we're having to shade everything with a pencil. We thought, why are we doing this? So they converted, and we're allowed to use actual ink stamp notaries now. They still look good. All right, let's take a break there, JP. We'll take that right now. I've gotten one dipper done and a whole bunch of other stuff. Phil Williams.
It was a substantial show either way.
Substantial. I like it. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Saving the world one soundbite at a time. Hey, I just realized Tom, with all the kids, he had sent 2 texts. And he sent me one. He goes, "You missed the previous text." Okay, Tom, I see it now. Thank you very much. The first one had said, "Every time I get a document auto-penned by the big boss, there's a note accompanying it that says either VOCO, basically it's been verbally approved, or approved by email." Yeah, I agree. That's the way it should be. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate you. Tom with all the kids. All right, I'm going to change dippers now. What do you say? You want to do 2? Let's do 2 today. Why not?
I think that's a good idea.
I'm pretty sure I did 1 in the first part of the show. Judicial activism.
Yeah, I think that was worth a dipper in itself.
Can we count that?
I guess we can count it. Yeah,
Is John going to count it for my grade?
It depends. I mean, he's a harsh critic. Yeah. We know.
When you can get a whole off the cuff dipper, you know you're getting passion.
Like an unplanned dipper to start the day.
Passion.
I feel like that should count.
I agree. Thank you very much. All right, dipper number 2 though is this is gonna get. We don't have a drum roll, do we? Do we have a drum roll?
No, we do not.
God, we need to get a drum roll.
No, we do.
This one is gonna get some people fired up. Text lines are open: 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Birthright citizenship. Jay. Yeah, listen. I do not think. So I was on Newsmax this past weekend. And part of the topic of discussion of the panel that I was on for the Saturday morning show was related to birthright citizenship. What do I think about this? So before I even dive into my dippers, let me tell you what I think about this. I think it has to end. I think it absolutely is not being used today in the way the framers of the 14th Amendment ever anticipated. When the 14th Amendment was initially enacted and ratified by the states in the wake of the Civil War, I want to say it was 1868, something like that. The 14th Amendment put into place was largely to grant citizenship to freed slaves. That was its original intent. You can go back and look at the framer. There's a thing in the law called legislative intent. This has been like lawyer field day, but there's a thing in the law called legislative intent. You have case law, which is where judges make a ruling and it sets precedent. And then the other one is called statutory law, and that's where legislative action has created a statute or a constitutional matter that we have to abide by. That's called the black letter law. The black letter law is always more decisive and stringent than typically what is found in the case law, because the case law is judicial interpretation of something, whereas statutory law is black and white. All right, that being said, when all this is done, when black and white law is put into place, you can oftentimes look for what is known as the legislative intent. In other words, if you're not sure what they meant, go back and look and see what they said when they were passing what you're reading now. And you can still do that. Well, this is the 14th Amendment. This is an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. This is absolutely something that is going to be on the record, and you can still find the debates and the writings and the legislative intent of the people who were in office at the time who passed this. And it's significant when you do that. And you will not find that what they intended was, if a day ever comes that we have millions of people flooding across our southern border and washing into our nation, then let's go ahead and just say this law will allow them all to be citizens. No. No one ever did that. In fact, I've got a quote here. I pulled an article from FAIR, which is their website is fairus.org. That's the Foundation for American Immigration Reform. FAIR has a great write-up on birthright citizenship that came out yesterday. The headline of it is, and by the way, these are all on the resources that we got for the show, rightsidemedia.org. Go to the live stream page underneath the screen where you can watch, us in the studio doing the show here. You see resources, and all the resources. If I'm rattling paper, there's a link to it, so you can go get it yourself. This is a great article from FAIR. They make the point that the Trump administration has the ability to petition for the Supreme Court to deal with the 14th Amendment interpretation. And the author points out that one senator back in the 1800s who spoke of it when they were framing it said persons may be born in the United States and yet not be citizens. Well, that's legislative intent, my friends. Legislative intent. We'll come back and dive into it in more detail. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. I'm talking about this show, y'all. Goes from Huntsville way on back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa way on back over to Gadsden. I mean all the way down to that prettiest little town on the plains called Auburn. And oh yes, stretching across the border into Fort Benning, Georgia. Fort Benning, I called it Fort Benning. And even big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in, just for good measure. All right, listen, I gotta dive a little further into this thing. I'm talking about birthright citizenship. All right, coming here in the last half hour of the I guess we're in the go home half hour right now of the show. But in the last half hour, I gotta dig a little more into this birthright citizenship thing with you, because right now this is a major challenge. Trump has issued an executive order called "Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizenship." And he's seeking to establish that birthright citizenship shall not be established, I'm quoting the words, shall not be extended to those unlawfully or temporarily in the country, and thus not otherwise subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. The reason he said it that way is because that is the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment literally allows for someone to have citizenship if they are, in fact, born here and subject to the jurisdiction of here. Now, how do we challenge that? Well, you have to look, first of all, at a variety of things. Legislative intent, I spoke about that a minute ago. When it was framed, when it was first put before the body for vote to be then sent out to be ratified by the people, did the legislation done, were the legislators intending for it to be something that any given person who staggered across the Rio Grande and had their baby here would suddenly have a U.S. citizen anchor child? And no, it was not. I would hazard that it was not. Legislative intent seems to imply that it was not. Now, nonetheless, we already have, four? I think it's a judge in the U.S. District for Washington, another in Maryland, another in New Hampshire, another in Massachusetts, have all issued nationwide injunctions against Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship being enforceable. It's going to the Supreme Court, and it has to. We're going to have to get a SCOTUS interpretation of whether or not millions of people are allowed to flood the southern border and then millions of their children become U.S. citizens merely because they came here illegally. Here's the thing. Subject to the jurisdiction. What does that mean? Well, let's see. They came here illegally, and yet they are actually citizens of a foreign land. Would that imply then that they are not here with the intent to be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States? Because that's the way the ratified version says. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. And it then puts the prohibitions against, not allowing that. So jurisdiction, here's part of the argument. Lawyer Phil again. Part of the argument against the idea that you can have millions of people flood the country and become immediate citizens is that the word jurisdiction used in the amendment is determined as a political jurisdiction. Meaning, and the article I've got is awesome, meaning that means subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, one must owe an allegiance then to the United States and not to any other foreign power, aka you came here and you're a citizen of Mexico or Venezuela or Guatemala or Cuba or China or wherever, and you came here illegally, you're still subject to your home country's jurisdiction. You didn't come here to be subject to ours. In fact, you snuck in. You were choosing to not subject yourself to our jurisdiction. You did not enter appropriately. You did not have permission. You did not apply for citizenship or a green card. So you did not subject yourself to our jurisdiction. You're still subject to your home jurisdiction. Wouldn't that seem to imply then that this is interpreted as anchor babies don't apply? This is a fight, y'all. And literally, we're going to wind up having to, by the way, there's been cases. They're going to argue, one of the cases called United States versus Wong Kim Ark. What? Yeah, United States versus Wong Kim Ark. It was an 1898 case. Supreme Court of the United States ruled that a Chinese resident was allowed to become a citizen, and we couldn't deny it because he'd been born here. The difference is they love to quote this case, the birthright citizenship advocates. But United States versus Wong Kim Ark did not say the same thing as what we're dealing with now. Because in his case, his parents were here as resident aliens permanently and lawfully. And he was born here, and he was being deported, and he fought it, and he won. But nowhere in that Supreme Court ruling did it extend to children born to illegal aliens. So this is going to be a fight. Now, South Carolina's Attorney General is already out there speaking against it. We have states that are helping to fight the issue. South Carolina's Attorney General is one of those who has filed a brief in the Supreme Court on the issue right now. And he says, he's saying we can't go down that road. I won't try to quote the whole thing. But some are saying that one of the ways that Trump administration is trying to get around this is by not just, and this is important, the Trump administration is not just challenging the constitutionality of the injunctions against the executive order. The Trump administration is also challenging the ability of a federal district court judge in one jurisdiction issuing a blanket injunction on the entire nation, meaning that one judge over here can shut down the entire nation over there. And that does not seem to be jurisdictionally sound. And so what we're looking at right now is this case is going to go to the Supreme Court. And we're going to find out whether we just inherited millions of new citizens who didn't bother to stand in line and go through the process. We're going to find out whether or not you're allowed to flood our borders and just suddenly become citizens by coming here illegally. We're going to find out. The Supreme Court's going to have to do it. In the process, though, what we may also find out is that nationwide blanket injunctions, like we've been seeing on all the other cases, like USAID and, everything else Trump does, that those blanket injunctions may actually not stand up as well. All right, that was fairly quick, but that's the rundown. Birthright citizenship, big, hairy deal, and it's going to keep on going. I got one call on the issue, so I'll take that real quick before I go to the break. Graham from Meridianville. Hey, man, how are you?
Hey, Phil, how you doing?
I'm
quick
good.
question, and then I'll hang up and let you answer.
Okay.
Do you think some of these judges are making these crazy rulings just to try to get Trump to disregard the rulings and do what he wants to do anyway, so they have it as a political issue?
Oh, well, absolutely. Hey, thanks for the question, Graham. Yeah, I'll opine on that for a minute. Do I think that some of these judges are predisposed against Trump and they have an activist mentality? I absolutely do. I mean, you look at some of the ones who were appointed and where they came from. Just look at Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. She was not appointed because she was the absolute best jurist who could have taken the bench. She was appointed because, first of all, Biden said he was going to find a black woman to take the position. She will always have an asterisk by her name. And it's unfortunate because I'm sure she's a brilliant woman. She may be liberal, but she's still a brilliant person and a very accomplished jurist, and she'll still always have an asterisk by her name. What I'm saying is the Biden administration, the Obama administration, both made it a point to find activist judges, and they did that. Now, I recognize that every judge is going to have their own understandings of things, like I'm a Christian, I'm pro-life. If I were on the bench as a judge, I would not stop being a Christian and stop being pro-life. I would not take it out on a Muslim because I'm a Christian, and that's the idea of being neutral. But you could not tell me to not have my faith when I took the bench. So some of these things come with you, and I get that. But do I think that some of them are trying to set Trump up? Absolutely, I do. That's why Trump has got to surround himself with good people, and Trump is going to have to appeal everything to SCOTUS, and SCOTUS is going to have to get their game face on and start taking some of this stuff up, because otherwise we're going to have a patchwork quilt of federal district court judges believing they know more than the executive, and checks and balances are not checks and balances when it's not balanced.
Exactly. That's the thing it's like checks and balances goes across all. It's checks and balances is not a funny word for the president can't do anything. It's like it checks and balances across the board, all three levels, the executive, judicial, legislative, they're all. It doesn't mean that's all in the courts, So the president has some. I'm so sick of the checks and balances being used as, because they don't know what it means. They just hear it as president has no power is pretty much what they hear, which is not true. So,
and I'm pretty sure I just coined the new bumper sticker.
What's that?
Checks and balances are not checks and balances if they're out of balance.
Checks and balances have to be in balance.
Thank you very much. No, great comment. And you're so spot on. So yeah, thanks for the call, Graham. Appreciate that very much. Do I think they're trying to set Trump up? Of course I do. Some of them are just what I would call more liberal in their persuasions, and they interpret the law differently. And we're going to find that. I mean, if I'm a fairly conservative. Oftentimes, civil litigation. I typically work in defense. In other words, I'm defending people from lawsuits. The plaintiffs bar, the ones who tend to sue on personal injury and that kind of stuff. A judge who's been a personal injury attorney is going to come into the bench and have a slightly different perspective than I would. A judge who used to be a prosecutor is going to have a different perspective than a defender. But they still have to be neutral to the extent they possibly can. And I don't think that's happening here. I think we're watching some judicial activism. I think we're seeing some who absolutely are providing what the law calls an abuse of their discretion that is certainly reversible in some cases. At the very least, they're trying to stymie things that are happening. And I really do believe you're right. I think that they are trying to trip Trump up. But I mean, Trump does have the power of his office. He has the bully pulpit. He has the ability to have a bigger voice than any district court judge is ever going to have. And he has the ability to immediately appeal to the Supreme Court of the United States on many of these things, some of which he can even bypass the appellate levels and go straight to the Supreme Court. But that being said, do I think there's some of them who are out to get him? Sure. Yeah, I do. All right, I got several text messages, including some new ones coming in from Chattanooga. Y'all stay tuned. We're going to take a break right now, and then we will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Man, making common sense like a superpower. Hey, by the way, our new texter that we had earlier was Jill from Chattanooga. Jill, we are glad you are in the text lines. Thank you very much for joining us, and we're loving having our Chattanooga audience. So good deal. Jill from Chattanooga in the text. Let me jump on over there to the phones because he is back. Jeff Rowe from Indiana. How you doing, buddy? How's your voice?
I think I had the Dale Jackson voice-itis or something. Kind of sounded a lot like him for a while.
Oh my gosh! What happened to you? You say you swallowed a frog yesterday? What's the deal?
I listened to Dale Jackson, and I think it caught what he had through the radio. Apparently, I didn't know you could catch it that way. But maybe I should wear a FM filter or something.
No doubt. Start masking up while you drive down the road. Well, you sound like you're doing better today. But what do you think about all this stuff, man? What do you think about what you're talking about?
Well, you're talking about the citizenship and everything.
Yeah.
Well, now, do all the delegates or the from everybody from other countries and everything? Oh, I lost my train of thought there. But all the embassies.
Yeah.
All the anybody that's born here and through the embassies, they're not born at the embassy. They're usually born at a hospital. Are all those children American citizens now?
They are not. In fact, it's interesting because that's one of the arguments for why birthright citizenship is not intended. It's literally there are exceptions. In other words, you can be born here and not be a citizen. And one of the examples is if you are the child of an embassy official from a foreign country, it doesn't count. So yeah, that's a classic example.
Would that be because they're contingent to a different power, a different government?
Well, I agree. They're subject to a different power. They're not subject to our jurisdictions. They come over here. They literally live on sovereign land of their own country when they're embassies. And hey, by the way, Jeff, I got to tell you, breaking news right now: the SpaceX capsule is actually under parachute canopy right now, about to splash down. The astronauts have been rescued by Elon Musk. Looks like they're coming in kind of fast. I'll be honest. Yeah.
Well, hey, if they can catch the booster stage, they can surely land a ship with parachutes.
I'm saying we're watching the big chute just deployed. So I just told the drogue chutes were out a minute ago, and I told JP, I said we better see a big chute sometime like real soon. But it did. They just popped big canopy, and they are now floating down. That is just very cool, and praise God. How about that? Elon Musk saved the day. That's just awesome. Well, yeah, go back to the birthright citizenship, though, and let me ask you this. That's been enjoined by judges. What do you think about all these judges right now that are enjoining everything that Trump does?
I think, does the executive branch have any power to take these judges
like it.
out?
Apparently, the executive branch has the power to appeal.
Actually, the judicial branch just interprets the law. The Congress writes the laws, but the executive branch enforces the laws. So he don't have to enforce a thing, they say.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Yeah. It's amazing.
What are they going to do?
They can just strip him of anything and everything because they have a whim. But all right, where are you at on the road right now, dude?
I'm doing about a half a mile an hour in the city that I hate to go through every day.
There has got to be an end around for you. We got to find you a route.
I need SpaceX to find me a booster to put this thing on.
Bring that sky crane in and lift you up and over.
Yeah, Joe Biden on the Autopen and everything.
Yeah.
Trump spent a lot of time in getting before judges and everything. I think Congress should subpoena Joe Biden to answer these questions that who was in charge of these Autopens and how was this performed and everything.
Yeah.
And put him on in the hot seat for a time or two. Trump was ex-president and he's sat before judges, so I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
What would be interesting is can he even provide testimony? Because if you remember, there's a reason why he was not indicted on the documents case, because they said that he was senior and of bad memory. Got to run, brother. Got to run. But you be safe on the road, man. Take care.
Have a good one.
You too. SpaceX Dragon landing in the Gulf of America as we speak, and that is just very cool watching it come down right now. This is like hearkening back to the 60s when I was a kid, watching the lunar landings and then the splashdowns. Grades are in. John from Huntsville says Dale Strong and JP both get an A+ for their equally spectacular performance. It means today's winner is Phil Williams with an A++. Thank you, sir, for his nearly perfect performance. Congratulations, by the way, he says. JP, your favorite basketball team, North Carolina, plays tonight.
Nope, that would not be that, actually. No, North Carolina actually should not even be in the tournament.
No, controversy upon controversy.
Yeah.
You about to say something else? What do you got?
Well, we actually got about 30 seconds here, but I think that's that right there. I'm going to take a guess on how they're going to try to frame Elon as the bad guy in this.
Oh, how so?
Maybe carbon emissions, using his carbon emissions.
Too many carbon emissions on the re-entry.
I am interested, though. How are they going to twist that narrative? How are they going to twist the Elon? Because the narrative has been Elon bad for months now. Yeah. How are they going to twist this one?
Those astronauts, by the way, have already confirmed that it was a political decision by Biden not to let Elon Musk help out last year. They could have come home months and months ago. But they didn't.
I bet some staffer told them not to do it because of that.
Right now, Command Central is saying welcome home to them as they are successfully splashed down and floating while they wait on the rescue swimmers. But that's just nothing but good right there. Glad of it. Welcome home, men and women. All right, y'all. I say it all the time, but it's true. There's more of us than there are of them. God is still very much on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.